The podcast that floats down here.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast that floats down here. I'm your host for tonight. I'm Ben. Joining with me, as always, is our Stephen King expert, Melissa.
Hello.
And our first-time It reader, Luke.
Hi, that's me and stuff.
And we are continuing on with our reread of Stephen King's It. Tonight we're going to be discussing Part 2, June of 1958, Chapter number 8, Georgie's Room and the House on Neibolt Street. This chapter was 62 pages long, and it's 5.69% of this book. It's a long one. Luke, you had the recap. Take it away.
Richie stops his car just before entering into Derry. Stepping out of his car, he feels agonizing needles burn into his eyes, which ceases immediately. He reminisces over old landmarks and family homes
as the flood of memories continues to overwhelm his mind. A doe crosses into the road, and Richie uses his Irish cop voice to scare it off. The use of this voice reminds him of the day of the dam. Ben took full responsibility of the design of the dam and was quickly supported by all the other boys to share the blame. Mr. Neal, the Irish cop, gave the boys the lowdown on what damming up this portion of the Derry drainage system means for the whole town. Ben feels terrible, but the boys are given the chance to get out of trouble by demolishing the dam. Once finished, Bill and Richie head back to the Denborough's residence, where Richie helps Bill have a bit of closure about Georgie's death and convinces Bill to take another look at Georgie's photo album. Bill is surprised to find that Georgie's school photo was missing, but now the last photo in the album was an old-timey photo of downtown Derry. Bill and Richie are even more surprised to find their own likenesses living within the photo. The two boys in the photo make their way across the street and head to the concert wall at the canal and are met by the clown having Georgie's face. Real-life Bill instinctively tries to reach his hand in to save the photo boys and finds his fingers entering the image and are instantly slashed by the photo. After Richie wrenches Bill's fingers away, causing the boys and the book to fall to the floor, Bill flips the album back open to find the old-timey photo no longer had the boys in it. They were replaced by a balloon. This is enough to convince the boys that the clown is the monster killing the kids in Derry. A Saturday after the album incident, Richie invites Ben and Bev to the movies. His treat using his chore money. After the movie, the three losers were cornered in the alley by Henry Bowers and his gang. A fight ensues where all three losers stand tall together and fight back, which goes surprisingly well, allowing them to all escape to the bench in front of the police station. They then head down to the Barrens, where they meet up with Big Bill and some other schmo that was clearly not one of the losers. After playing, Bill and Richie make their way to Richie's house, where Bill informs Richie that he wants to investigate the house on Neibolt Street, where Eddie has seen the leper. Richie can't believe it, but Bill talks him into a tit-for-tat because he wants the clown dead. The following morning, Bill borrows his father's wartime pistol and packs a few other essential survival supplies, including a slingshot and sneezing powder. After a bit of gun safety discussion, the boys ride double on Silver, making their way to the house. At the end of Neibolt Street, they see the house. Eddie's story seems to hold up with the evidence they see. To Richie's astonishment, Bill slips through the window into the cellar. Richie, very timidly, follows. They decide to stick together, and after a short investigation, the werewolf from the horror film Richie saw with Ben and Bev storms down the stairs, chasing after the boys. Bill gets a shot off with the pistol, and the boys scramble up the coal pile. Bill had been grabbed and was being dragged back down to the cellar. Richie began shouting at the werewolf, using his Irish cop voice, which startled the monster and allowed Bill to get out. Bill fires the pistol again, blasting part of its skull away. Richie doses the werewolf with the sneezing powder, causing it to sneeze and wheeze comically. The boys run for it and make it to the street, the werewolf continuing to follow. They make it to Silver and begin riding. Slow at first, too slow. The wolf swings its paw and just misses Richie's head. Silver picks up the pace, but the wolf hasn't slowed and rips Richie's backpack off and nearly Richie. Bill digs deep and forces Silver to fly. Hi-ho, Silver, away! Still unable to be beaten in this death race, the wolf strikes the rear fender. Richie clutches on for dear life. The chase continues as Bill races to beat the devil to get away from the clown. He looks around and notices the clown had given up and disappeared. They stop Silver and topple over. In the aftermath, the boys cannot help but to weep and comfort each other.
Okay, wow. So, pretty powerful chapter. You got to see some interesting dynamics coming from Richie's perspective and everything. Melissa, what were your thoughts?
Well, so my first thought really kind of goes back to the Eddie chapter, where I really thought of Eddie as Bill's best friend. You really see them together a lot in the Ben chapter and in the Bill chapter. Or I'm sorry, the Ben chapter, well, the Bill chapter too, and the Eddie chapter. So there's a lot of Eddie and Bill. But this chapter made me really shift my thinking. And Richie and Bill have some very big, deep moments that typically you only allow your best and closest friends to see. So you can kind of tell that they're all very close friends. But I feel like there's some, like a special connection with Richie and Bill that Bill doesn't have with the others.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. I kind of get the feeling like Richie is almost the glue, because if you notice a little bit later on how he incorporates his hanging out with Ben and Bev, and he can morph into any part that's needed, kind of thing, to fit into the situation. Like his voices, he can play into the scene. Bill needed somebody to cry on. Ben needed somebody to pull him out. Bev needed somebody to stand up for her. It's kind of one of those of, I see him as kind of the chameleon of the group, and can pick any one of them and, figure out his role to that one person specifically.
I wonder how much of that is because, I mean, if you look at Eddie, he's definitely flawed, and his loser status is very apparent, right? He's the sickly kid.
Yeah.
Richie's is less apparent when you listen to Richie talk about Richie. My thought is, does that make Richie a little bit, not that he's not a loser, because we've seen how, trash mouth, he can't stop talking. He can't control his actions. His feet do things without thinking. So his own sense of self is a lot less insecure than the other characters.
Yes.
Except Bill. Bill's not really insecure in himself. He's more insecure in his place in his family, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So to me, that makes Bill and Richie almost equals. Bill is still the leader, but Richie is not somebody Bill has to care for as much as he does Eddie or Ben or Beverly or whoever. So because Richie doesn't need Bill to care for him, Bill can use Richie as his equal to lean on him.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And I think that goes right along with what Benji was saying. He kind of does seem like the glue in the group. He really can be almost best friends with everyone individual. We saw in this chapter when he goes and makes the phone calls to everybody, he's the one that reaches out and pulls people in. He pulls Ben, like you said, out to go do something. And he's the one that realizes Ben was lonely. And then he goes and he's already got a good relationship with Bev, and he pulls her into the group. And it's just, it's very fitting that he kind of is that sidekick to Bill, and that they are actually the ones that communicate to each other the way that they do. And they can get through to each other the way the others haven't been able to at this point, at least.
So if Bill is the president, that makes Richie the chief of staff.
Yes.
I think that's completely fair.
Yeah, that's completely
Not vice president.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Chief of staff.
He's more useful than that.
Yeah. No, I mean, if anything, Eddie would be vice president, to the point of he's the not second in command.
He's the solidifier of the idea.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one that just gives the power to the president.
And I think this all actually goes right into that first scene that we see.
Yeah.
Outside of older Richie, it's when the police officer, which I can't remember his
Mr.
name.
Nell.
Mr. Nell was there. And, Ben takes responsibility right away. He's clearly, he doesn't want to, and you can tell he's scared. He starts crying for it, but he quickly stands up and says, I told him how to do it. And then they all kind of back each other up. But
I am Spartacus kind of moment kind of thing.
Right. And at the same time, we start seeing some of these characteristics we just talked about happen right then. We see Bill actually step up, like we have heard him be talked about. If responsibility needs to be taken, he's going to take as much of it as he can. And right along with that, he kind of stutters and slips up, and Mr. Nell's like, what did he just say? And it's Eddie is the one that backs him up, and he says, this is what it is. And then we see, Richie step in with the whole, he basically says, follows him up, kind of saying the same thing. He runs his mouth a little bit, but still pulls it back just enough to back everybody up. And then Stan does very little, as usual. But it's nice seeing those characteristics playing off each other. And I think it fits pretty well with what we're saying.
So let's kind of go, maybe not scene by scene, but starting with that first opening scene of this chapter, we had Richie driving up the highway to Derry. And he could have taken the turnpike, but he decided to take, the original back way, the side road. And, with it, I like the line of even Richie can make a deer get off a good one. Just basically scaring a deer enough to make him shit himself. I thought that was a funny, little way to open.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting scene because that's right before that is when he's driving and he crosses the line into Derry and he feels that burning pain behind his eyes. And so he pulls over and that's when he sees the deer and he slips into the old Irish cop voice.
Yeah.
And that's where he yells at the doe.
Jumping Georgie.
Right, I'm going to go tell Father O'Staggers on you. Yeah. It was a pretty funny scene. And I thought that the burning pain behind the eyes was pretty telling us that, like, hey, you're officially back. So after that, that's when we actually go back and have the scene that we kind of started talking about with Mr. Nell being there, and he tells him to take down the dam and all that, and explains you just backed up all of the gravity wells, and now you don't realize it. You've been playing in the piss water of Derry all day. Pretty gross. And Eddie's just like, oh god,
the mom and Eddie shudders.
The mom and Eddie shudders, and so he takes a hit off his aspirator. It was just pretty funny right there, and Ben just feels so bad because. Like he's getting props for having a good design, but at the same time, it's like there's more to it.
Yeah, and like I like Mr. Nell, and I love this scene because he shows Ben some encouragement of how did you see this in the book? And Ben's like, no, I just figured it out. And Mr. Nell's like, jumping big guard. But like he had the foresight to tell them to stay together, especially in the tough times, and he doesn't sugarcoat things. He can tell, you're 10, 11, 12 years old, but I'm going to talk to you like an adult. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on. And I really liked that scene and how he, treated the boys and as kind of adults, as, not just children of, hey, don't do this. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in the first part of the book here. Another one of my favorites. Melissa, I'm sure you probably picked up this term, but I love the term boy neat. Only gives mom a slight headache.
Are you kidding me? I am boy neat.
Oh, yeah, I know. But
I'm not even really boy neat, to be perfectly honest. I'm a recovering slob. So boy neat is like an aspiration.
Fair point. Fair. I just, saw that. I was like,
but it's not an untrue statement.
No, it's enough to where everything is. Like my truck right now is boy neat. If my boss looked at it, they would
touch my piles.
Yes. I know exactly where everything is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you don't need to. I know where it's at.
Uh-huh. Yep. Nope. I'm not even offended by the term boy neat because, like, stereotypically it's true.
Yeah.
It just applies to me.
I think I misread that line.
The boy neat?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I loved the boy neat line.
They went upstairs and down the hall to Bill's room. It was boy neat, which meant it would only given the mother of the boy in question only a mild headache to look at. The shelves were stuffed with helter-skelter collection of books and comics. There were more comics plus a few model toys and a stack of 45s on the desk. There was also an old Underwood office model typewriter on it. His folks had given it to him for Christmas 2 years ago.
Okay. I think it was kind of right along with them talking about the things that they were doing. Like they were going to put the music on that his parents didn't like so that they would know that they were in their room.
I took it as like boy neat being like only boys would think it's like neat or interesting. That's
Gotcha.
just reading through it. Like I just missed that, but it makes sense. I get it both ways.
Well, and I'm actually going to stop you on something. They didn't turn on music that his parents didn't like. They turned on music that they approve of,
Right.
because the music they like, the parents don't allow him to buy.
Okay. I thought they said, they put on something that his parents did get for him.
The
That's-
Fleetwoods,
Yeah, Fleetwoods. I was gonna say or Dizzy Gillespie.
which I don't know who the Fleetwoods are. I heard it and I thought of Fleetwood Mac right away, but I don't know who the Fleetwoods
Yeah,
are.
no idea. So the boys go into George's room, and you could see the kind of the thin layer of dust on things that because it hadn't been disturbed, and they go into the book, or start looking through the book and everything. My question is, after everything that happened with that, reaching in, seeing the carnival, or I say carnival because that's a miniseries thing, but seeing the street activity, and then Bill reaching his fingers in. First of all, my first question was, but then I read the next section. Why would you stick your fingers in there? Just why? And I put that note down, and then I read the next section of, well, it was George, or it was a clone trying to be Georgie, and I was like, oh, okay, you answered my own question that I had. But the next thing with it is, would you have reopened the book? I would say yes, but
I mean, Bill did.
yeah,
I mean, clearly something weird is going on, and the other photo, the Georgie photo was gone. So clearly something's going on with it. So opening it up, just don't touch it. Like, don't touch the pictures. I think good idea.
I would not touch it. I would not open it. I would not go near it. I'd make one of you do it.
that's fair.
Yeah, that whole thing was definitely pretty unexpected. Like, I wasn't surprised by the photos moving and things like that. That I kind of saw coming, but then the sticking his fingers in and having that all happen was very unexpected.
In what way?
It's just different than anything we've seen up till this point. The photos moving is already kind of like, well, it could be a hallucination of some sort. Like, clearly both of them are having it, but there could be some non-magical reason that it's happening. When his fingers get cut, like, that's when it's there's something extraordinary happening here. It can't just be logically explained, at least from what I can tell.
Well, I agree with you. I think even though, like, every time we've seen Pennywise, he's looked a little different. Okay. And all of those things are kind of horror movie staples. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
But when King went and took the picture and had somebody get hurt from a picture, that's when you realize that he literally anything can happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like, I think that's the moment you're like, like literally nothing is safe. Not even sitting in your own room
Right.
looking.
And there's clearly something else going on. Like, it's not just, there's
Right.
some weird serial killer that's just doing, like, it really is.
A supernatural kind of
Right. And
thing.
that's funny because, like, clearly I'm the one that doesn't know what's going on. But I did, in between this chapter and the one before it, on my read through the chapter, I did a full sweep through it again. And the dedication itself starts telling you this. And I don't think we really touched on the dedication at the very beginning of our podcast, but I'm going to go ahead and read it right now. It says, "This book is gratefully dedicated to my children. My mother and my wife taught me how to be a man. My children taught me how to be free. Naomi Rachel King at 14, Joseph Hillstrom King at 12, Owen Philip King at 7. Kids, fiction is the truth inside the lie, and the truth of this fiction is simple enough. The magic exists." So, like, just going through that, and, like, after this whole chapter and hearing that, it really is like there's no in this normal world explanation for what's going on. There is true supernatural events happening.
And what you touched on right there is why I love King so much.
Mhm.
My favorite King books have that. It's not that they're scary in like a horror movie slasher flick kind of way, but in that like mental thriller of he really could do anything.
Mhm. No one is
His
safe at
brain
any
is
point.
just twisted enough
Exactly.
that nothing is safe. And that's what draws me to his writing.
And I like that he not hides it, but puts it in the dedication, which is before, it's right after the cover. It's before the table of contents. Most people won't look at it.
Gotcha.
All right.
So, okay. So, after the scene in Georgie's room, we head to the following Saturday, and Richie wants to go to the movies. My first note on this is, man, I really wish we could have had the Creature Feature Saturday afternoon, evening showings with a theater full of raucous, dumbass kids just shouting at the screen when, when we were growing up, we didn't really have anything like that. Didn't have like the whole neighborhood, but it reminded me of kind of like a weekly Rocky Horror Picture Show, kind of thing that you could go to each and every week, but just with a different movie. Like, cause I've been Rocky Horror, the midnight showings with the big crowds and everything like that. I just, that was what King made me imagine, that kind of scene just with a bunch of kids and everything. And I really wish I could have had that growing up, that kind of style of, movie going experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. That'd be pretty interesting for sure.
See, it would probably drive me crazy because I actually like watching the movies and not being distracted by all the people being crazy in the theater.
This feels a little bit more like it's for the kids, like just to go. And it's a little bit different than like, oh, we're going to go watch the new movie that everyone's just dying to see the new movie. It really is more of a social event more than, hey, we're going to go watch the movie.
Yeah, because this is
But
also...
remember, I don't people well, so that's probably why.
Yeah, no, we get that.
Yeah, and this is also before the time of the big blockbuster, because Jaws was the first official big blockbuster. So going to the movies was more a social thing than a theatrical thing. And for
Home entertainment was at a different spot in 1958 than it was in the 80s.
Exactly. Yeah, that too.
I really liked the scene with Richie and his parents.
Yeah,
Richie's parents parent him really well. I think they understand that he's a little absurd at times, and his dad gives it right back with really dry responses. I just liked that they understand who Richie is, and he's like, he's blackmailing me. You know this, right? He's blackmailing me, and his mom's like, yes, dear, I know, like because it's what Richie needs. Like he needs to be kind of put in his place at home like that because. Yeah, it can run away with
yeah. That feeling in your chest is that your heart pounding because you really want to go, or is that because I got you bent over a barrel?
Right. Is that the 5 eggs and the 5 pancakes and 2 eggs in your belly? Or?
Yeah. My note on with his parents is Richie is another one, who seems to have a normal family life. Him and Mike really are the only two that we know right now that have kind of a normal mom, dad, good relationship, and they all seem to get along really well. There's no animosity. There's no darkness like we see with Bill, like we see with Eddie, like even with Ben, his mother's good, but she's distant. She's gone. She's working.
When she's also feeding him to compensate.
Yes. With Beverly, we can only assume. Well, we already know
from this chapter several times.
Yeah, and we know from this chapter he knocked her around and left her bruised. So we already know she's abused and everything like that. But Richie, the only thing bad about his family is they make him work for his allowance.
That's not bad.
That's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. So it's one that it's kind of nice to see the multitude of dynamics coming in. My next note with it, unless Luke, you have something. Richie reaching out to Ben, because he called Bill first. Bill was up in Bangor for his speech therapy. Then he reached out to Eddie, who had to travel with his mom, see his aunts. And then he thought about it, and he called Stan.
To Stan as well,
and
who broke a window.
Yeah,
so he was grounded basically.
But then he reached.
Stan does something.
Yeah, right.
He broke a window. Stan did.
Real quick on the stand real quick. When they were at the police officer, I forgot about this earlier. He doesn't really say much in that scene. He basically just says, I was there too.
Yeah, me too.
And then no, Eddie says me too.
Oh,
and that's when Officer Snell's like,
me too.
Me too, what's that? Is that your name or is that where you're from? But Stan, another thing that he's quoted in is a look that he gives Richie. It's not, he doesn't say anything, but he's quoted with a look.
And didn't he have his hand on Richie's shoulder?
Yes.
Right, ready to pull him back.
From doing anything. Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to do anything, but neither are you.
It's just funny that Stan is used as a dead weight.
Yeah.
In some, you know what I mean? Like
he's a weighted vest.
Mind the pun.
Yeah. So that was just a random thought that I had while we were talking about Stan.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that would be all the Stan talk because he doesn't do anything else.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Then Richie calls Ben.
Yeah, he calls Ben, and I liked it because they just met. They just met 5 days ago. Last day of school, and this is the Saturday. So let's say within the last 5 days. But he had the mindset to, hey, I'll call that kid. He seemed pretty cool.
He was definitely impressed with him.
Yeah, he was. And he followed his orders. And, from the last chapter, he was following his orders, doing what he was supposed to do. But that seemed to me cute. That's what kind of brought me to my first note of it, is as he was the glue. He was the one that could befriend anyone, because he could read people and see what they needed.
Not to be devil's advocate, but Ben and Richie had talked before.
Yeah.
Earlier in the book, Ben had said, oh yeah, this kid Richie Tozier said to me, da 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 da. Now, Richie's never reached out to Ben to go hang out, but they've been friendly. They've been on speaking.
They've been acquaintances before. But they are now friends.
Exactly.
Is what Richie's making the decision that we are friends now.
Right, but it's more like reaching out to a kid that he never chose to hang out with before, not a kid that is like brand new and he's never seen.
Sure. It's a kid that he didn't really know that well. He knows better now. But yeah, I like that Richie's also very good at recognizing that, wow, Ben's lonely. It's a good pickup, because I don't think everyone would get that necessarily. Like, Bill didn't mention it. Eddie didn't mention it.
Ben didn't even know it,
Well, yeah, Ben has no clue. I mean, he's going to be the last person to know. I think Beverly will be able to tell pretty soon. But Richie just gets people, it seems like. He just understands people at their base level a little bit more than most characters that we've seen. He understood the cop, more than everyone else, because he's like, asked him, what's that in your drink there, and just he's trying to get him to open up, and that just seems to be Richie's MO, as they say.
I'm just excited we get to finally meet Beverly,
and we're getting to that right now. So Richie heads on downtown and runs across a striking young female with red hair and sitting on a park bench with a little bruise on her face, and it is Beverly. Luke, what'd your take on this scene?
I liked this scene. She's clearly, as Richie puts it, just one of the guys, but nicer to look at. And he thinks more about how interesting she is and how cool she is to hang out with the yo-yo, and she kind of dishes out the dirt as well to the Marcia and whatever that boy's name is that went walking by giving them crap. She sticks up for herself and for others real quick, and Richie respects that quite a bit, it seems like.
But he still thinks about her underwear. And you don't do that with one of the guys.
Right. Just one of the guys, but nicer to look at.
Right. Exactly.
I really liked that. Like, I like that they all she's a chick, but she's a tough, cool chick. Mm-hmm. So that makes her like, I can just be friends with her. Like, yeah, she's cool and she's a girl and she wears skirts and whatever, but at the end of the day, like, she's just a person who's fun, and so we're going to hang out with her because she's fun.
Right. She's just worth hanging out with because she's worth hanging out with. It's just an extra whatever that she's not bad to look at.
Doesn't hurt.
Right.
If only the boys were cute.
Apparently Bill's not bad. Is what we
True.
know.
Hey, in fairness, Richie, in at least the miniseries, was Seth Green, and he was cute.
That's true. I do love Seth Green.
I knew it. That's why I called that out. And actually, in the new film, it's Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things.
I have yet to watch that. I feel like I need to.
Yeah, it's good. I haven't watched the second season.
If you're a Stephen King fan, which you are, you would really dig the first season.
I am.
Surprise, yeah. That's why we're doing this podcast. But you would really like the first season. Second season, you would enjoy.
So in that scene with Richie and Beverly, she shows him how to work on the yo-yo a bit. And then he asks her on a date, and she calls him out on that. And I like that he gets kind of flustered, and the line says, Richie, as he usually did in such moments of confusion, took refuge in absurdity. So he goes way over the top to hide his nervousness.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, clearly someone who's being that brash and that loud and that eccentric is nervous about something, right? I mean, that's his mentality, and it's easy to cover that up, your voice shaking or whatever, if you're overly doing a voice or masking yourself like he does with his other voices. I just thought that was interesting of the narrator to call out.
Yeah, and I kind of liked it that Richie didn't even realize he asked her on a date. He was just saying, hey, pal, want to go to the movies kind of thing, and then she turned it around on him. Are you asking me out on a date? And he's like, oh, shit, yeah. Well, yeah, yes, I am.
I did offer to pay for her. Yeah. I didn't offer to pay for Ben.
Well, he did offer to pay for Ben, but he didn't ask for
Ozies.
For
Ozies. Right.
My next note on that, the feeling Ben must have had when he saw Bev coming down the street with Richie, must have been excruciating between, first of all, jealousy and then embarrassment. He's always feels embarrassed, especially around her or because of her, just because of the size and insecurities on his own. But then he sees, Harry come down with Richie arm in arm, and just as that lovesick puppy kind of look, I can only imagine how much his heart kind of broke before they got to him. Once they got to him, he realized, oh wait, this is just kind of a friend's thing. And then she put her arm around him too, and kind of, and made him felt more accepted and everything like that. But
yeah, I get that. I don't know. I didn't. I feel like that would have been mentioned because I think Richie would have noticed.
He did
the hurt look in his eyes. I don't remember him saying that.
No, because
Richie
Ben
was
had
jealous.
just been running from the.
He was so distracted by the other boys. I don't know.
Maybe I'm projecting, but
I could just have missed it because then right away, Beverly welcomes him with open arms, and that's where Richie starts feeling a little bit jealous. That's what was mentioned, was Richie felt jealous that he felt like he was left out of. I guess it was just a look that passed between them, is what it said.
And that's all I'm talking about, is the walking up or coming around, because actually they were there before Ben got there. But like when he turned the corner and saw them standing together.
Sure, yeah, and it's possible.
It was just interesting how they went and saw a wolf, teenage wolfman picture, and then obviously it comes up later, because it projects onto Richie. But the fight breaks out. Anything with the fight, Lou?
It was nice to see. Not that they were getting picked on or anything, but that in numbers they can team up and be successful, even if it's by accident to get it going. Clearly, something's pulling these groups together. Also, seems to be pulling them out of issues like this a little bit, because Richie sticks his foot out without even meaning to. Yeah. Beverly quickly steps up to delay Ben getting hit, which is just enough for him to just go into beast mode. And I mean, he just really does. And he whoops some serious ass. Ben does. I mean, mostly defensive, but at the same time, he straight up bull rushes. Well, I think was it Bowers that he bull rushed? He held up the trash can lid. Or Richie did that. He held the trash can lid and pretty much broke.
Yeah, that was
I think it was Victor Chris that got bull rushed. Either way, the combination of all three of them was really cool to see them working together and getting out of a pickle.
Melissa, did you catch the beep beep Richie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a recurring thing, and Bev is the first one to introduce it in this chapter. That's why I made a note of it. Which is nice. I'm glad you caught that, because I read it, but I didn't realize that was the first time we saw it. Yeah, it's basically beep beep Richie, shut the fuck up. It's you're running your mouth, you're talking out your ass, your trash mouth, like a trash truck, beep beep, back up.
Gotcha,
kind of thing. So I did catch it that was the first one.
Right after that, when they're right in front of the police department, Richie officially titles them the Losers Club. It's the first time it's actually used in that way for the group in the book.
And then we get our drawing in of characters, how Beverly fits, but Bill's friend Bradley, what's his name, isn't.
Yeah, right. He just isn't. Not that there was anything wrong with him, and he'd probably be back to play at some point, but he just wasn't one of us. He wasn't one of us.
Yeah, I like the Losers Club is full. We already have our speech impediment guy.
Yeah.
I like that part.
This is also where he says the losers are being drawn in, and he's like, are we all here yet? He says that to himself, and clearly they're not all yet, at least for the characters. Not at that point, not all of them that were there at that moment, but I think he also realizes that Eddie and Stan are in that group as well.
All right, so next we kind of jump forward a few more days after they hang out in the Barrens, and I think Bill accepts Beverly and everything into the group, and it's just known that she's part now too. Did you have something?
No, I dub the member of group.
yeah.
Stamp of Bill approval.
The loser.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes with, I have like a random side note that's in this transitional part. And it's about how Richie thinks of 5 years later, which would be 1963, and he's seeing President Kennedy on screen, and like a random thought pops into his head about how that reminds him of Stuttering Bill. And he's like, wait, who's that? It's the idea of Stuttering Bill having that same sort of sense of authority that John F. Kennedy had. Like, that's a big comparison to make.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the most charismatic and influential people of that entire era, for sure.
Right. And keep in
cult
mind,
of
these kids are
personality.
from Maine, so they probably have a similar accent.
Except maybe less of a stutter on one of them.
Also true. The second thought is, okay, so this was 5 years later, and the idea of stuttering Bill was so shocking to him. He's like, wait, who? What?
Just somebody I used to know.
And it's only been 5 years.
Mhm.
So my thought's like, is this because of just the difference of what happens to you between the ages of 11 and 16? Or is that like something bigger and
For
greater?
someone as influential as Bill clearly seems to be to all of these characters, which is a little bit over the top, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. It's just a little over the top that like everyone is fawning so much over him. And we haven't seen a whole lot from Bill. Yeah, he's pretty cool, but he's not that cool. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's a little incongruous to me. But you wouldn't forget somebody that clearly means this much to you in that short a period, no matter your age, unless you're going through dementia.
All right. So Bill calls up Richie, or gets a hold of Richie a couple days later, or towards the end of June. We're moving on a few weeks now. And after Eddie had told him about the house on Neibolt Street and everything, Bill gets in his head that he wants to investigate.
But before he does that, they're at Richie's house.
Yeah.
And in front of Richie's mom, Richie calls Bill Mushmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And that's
I just
when-
liked that moment because they thought it was hysterical and his mom freaked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's when she's like, I just will never understand them. I
Yeah.
I don't know if I should be scared for them or scared of them.
Well, like, I get her, like, shock. Like, I love that his stutter is just a thing, and it's, like your eye color or, a funny way you walk. That's just something your friends are going to tease you for.
Right. It's like Ben being fat. It's like, because he's like, so what? And Bill's like, yeah, so what?
And they call him Trash Mouth. They call Richie.
Right. Now, if somebody outside the group would call Ben fat
Oh,
or
yeah.
everyone, then it would be on. But
yeah, full scare
right.
war.
But I like that his friends, it's a disability, but they don't really see it as that. Like, it's just what it is. I'm going to tease you for it, just like you're going to tease me for this, and it's no big deal. But I also get his mom's like sense of shock.
You shouldn't
you
be
can't
doing
say that about
Right.
somebody. You shouldn't point out somebody's misfortune or whatever. And I completely agree with both of them.
Well, I agree with Tyrion Lannister on this bit, in the fact that if you have something like that, embrace it, make it your own, make it your staple, because if you're not going to be aware of it, someone's going to use it against you, and then it's just a weakness, where this is, okay, well, yeah, I know, I stutter. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, who cares?
Tyrion Lannister is the best.
Yeah, drinking no things.
The world's not going to forget that you're a bastard. You shouldn't either.
Exactly.
So it's kind of one of those. And that's... And nice little segue, if we want, a little plug. If you're ever interested in Game of Thrones, check out our other podcast, the podcast that drinks and knows things, where Luke, myself, and a few other guests and hosts sit around, talk, drink, and talk about the Game of Thrones. We started with the last season, but we're on to beginning now all episode watch through. So check us out on iTunes and your podcast catchers. Anyway, moving on.
I like that Bill's really pushing the envelope to go find the clown, because he clearly, saw the clown acting as Georgie in the photo book. And so he says, it was the clown. I'm going to go find him, and I'm going to kill him. Yeah. He's really choosing to just do this now. And we have to investigate. We have to find everything that we can to figure out what's going on here, because I knew Eddie Corcoran. I knew that, he had problems with his stepdad, but they come to the fact that, I think all of these murders are happening from this single entity. We need to find it and take care of it.
My favorite little line of that section was Bill going, "You want to? Well, no, but I will."
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the essence of the Losers Club. It's, do you want to do this? No, not really, but we're going to. First, because Bill says we need to do this, and second, because it's what we need. It's what needs to be done. So I really like that.
Richie acts as a really good devil's advocate for Bill here, because Bill is all gung ho and let's go do it, and Richie's a really good point of view of realism. Clearly, there's something more going on here. We saw it. You shouldn't be able to put your fingers into a photo. Photos shouldn't be moving like they are. There's something else going on. What if we can't kill it? Even if you have your dad's gun, what then? And he's like, well, I'll just bring my sneezing powder, and if that doesn't work, we'll just tell the monster, hold on, monster, we're going to go to the library and try to figure this out for a while. Like, he does a good job of forcing Bill to take a step back. And it didn't slow Bill down at all, but it's just nice for them to actually work through this together. So we get to the house on Neibolt Street, and Bill leads the way. You know, not surprising. I think that's exactly what you would think would happen. But it's, again, one of those, a character having every intention to do something, and then something is pulling them or forcing them to not want to do it. Like, Richie basically is trying to think of excuses not to go down there. Bill's like, well, I'm going. So that's what's happening. And he's like, cut the shit, Richie, we're going. And that's when they have the line of, do you really want to do this? And he's like, no, but I will.
Yeah.
And then they do. And they go down into the basement, and Bill gives the directive that, you know, you go that way and I'll go this way. And Richie's like, bullshit, I'm sticking with you, Big Bill. And I thought that was really nice because that's the right choice as well. Stick together.
In that same scene, you know, as they're calling onto the porch, Richie had the thought, which just kind of broke my heart because it's so true, but about Bill cutting off the monster's head and bringing it back to his dad. Look, this is what killed Georgie. Now will you talk to me again tonight? Maybe just tell me how your day was, or who lost you guys, or when you were flipping to see how lost you guys were when you were flipping to see who paid for the morning coffee. Mm-hmm. It's one of those lines of, even Richie can see the heartache that Bill's going through, because they spent time at his place, and he sees, and they've talked obviously about just, you know, everything. And this is why Bill's doing this. He, again, sees the core of somebody, and this is why Bill's doing this, is just to get his father and mother, you know, just to get something from them.
It really worries me about Bill. Like, he's very driven to the point of being irrational about it. It's almost like Richie's going like, okay, I'm staying with you. I'm going to make sure you're okay. Mm-hmm. I'm going to drag you out when this gets too bad. Like,
I think we're
that
past,
voice of reason.
We're past bravery and courage and almost into stupidity. With where Bill is going, at least he's on that path of, he's going maybe too far, which for something like this, clearly you almost need to. I
think it's even worse than stupidity.
Oh, it's definitely reckless. I mean, it's just, I agree. I'm afraid for Bill.
And
without Richie there, it would have been entirely different. Which is why
I can't even think of the word. It's beyond reckless. It's beyond stupid. It's
irresponsible,
because it's like mentally checked. It's like his
mentally suicidal. I mean,
kind of, in some ways. What is that part of your brain called when you're high functioning, your frontal lobe, the part that does your high functioning thinking, and there's judgment. A word, and I can't remember it. It's gone for him. He is completely primal right now. I'm gonna kill this thing. It's very Lord of the Flies-esque,
which we've seen a lot in this book. That's usually more the mob mentality stuff that I'm thinking of, but it's like he's in that in other ways, more direct
because
ways.
He's using it against the monster instead of on a person because of the monster.
Sure.
Yeah. But who's to say the monster isn't guiding him to do this to bait him in?
Basically, or the monster just has that switch flips on it, but his directive is at the monster specifically already, so he's already got some kind of, I don't know. I can see where you're going with it. I'm not sure.
I can see that. I was more thinking, okay, so Richie talked about these groups, these kids being drawn in. Is there a reason why we're all here? Oh, we already have our stuttering member. Why is this? Like, right? Like, they're all being drawn in. And here is Bill, who's very opposite of most of those primal things we see in most of the characters. He's directing it directly at the monster. To me, it feels like it's being pushed by something else.
Maybe whatever the power that's driving our group together is, whatever that oversight thing is, that maybe the turtle. I have no idea. We haven't heard a reference to the turtle except for one brief little mention in this chapter, but it was very, very small and not directly towards something. He just mentions it. I think it was actually Richie when he was in the Mustang early on.
No, it was Bill's dream. I do have that note. Bill was he was talking about the day before or the day of Georgie's death, and Bill was like, I woke up in bed, I was still feeling down, I had a dream, turtle.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, the only reason why is because I have a note on there of that, but I just couldn't figure out how to put it in there. But yeah, it was mentioned in that aspect. I just had a question for you. Did you expect the werewolf?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for Richie.
That's what I mean.
Only Richie saw the werewolf is what I noticed. Bill saw the clown. Whenever we have the switch of perspective to Bill, he only talks about the clown and the letter jacket. They're both wearing the letter jacket, but only
Okay.
Richie sees the hairy paws, and only Richie sees the snarling teeth and snot coming out of his nose.
I missed that part.
And that was what I thought was interesting. They saw different monsters.
Think about it. Bill didn't go to the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he knows it as a clown at this point.
So that
I thought
switch,
I thought that was definitely interesting because this, I think I might know where you're going. I feel like this was similar to Beverly's chapter switch, where it was the change of perspective changed the feel of what was going on. It's not identical, but ever since that chapter, I've been more aware of the perspective changes in the different parts. That's all I was going to reference.
I was going to ask, do you think Pennywise then is a boggart?
Basically, I mean, at this point, yeah, that's what fits most. I mean, like my chart I have started, it's their most recent fear or their greatest fear. Sometimes it just is a proximity to the thing that scared them most recently, like Rodan, the giant bird, or the black creature of the Black Lagoon, or the mummy. Like, it's always the thing that was just most recent, but some of them have been just like the most terrifying thing possible for them.
I think it's interesting that for the first time, the monster doesn't really say anything.
Well, he does say, "I'm going to kill you too."
No, Richie goes, and he thought he heard it say.
Okay.
So
I took that
like
as
it might have, but it was very much like the growly monster because, and I think it's because it was the werewolf, so maybe it couldn't
vocalize
talk as
it
much.
the same.
But I thought, because I was really looking, I was like, hey, we could get some really good audio clips and maybe use some of these lines. And there was nothing that the werewolf said except for that one little maybe Richie heard possibly.
The reason I thought it was probably said was because this was when Richie was out ahead of Bill, and this is when Bill is like, "It's got me," and so Richie has to turn around and like kind of drag him through the window or whatever, like that whole scene up the coal pile. So I think he was maybe muffled because he was already kind of out the window. So he's like, "I think I hear that, but maybe not." But as like you said, maybe the werewolf voice is a little different and more of a growl.
Or maybe Richie's still having a hard time believing it all. Because he was the one, like, up until this point, he was like, I don't know. Like, if I don't believe it, that means I'm not believing Bill, but I don't know if I believe Ben. I don't know if I believe Eddie. And even with the pictures, it's like, okay, something's going on. But even like 5 days later, he's like, well, maybe you just got bad paper cuts. Like,
yeah, he's definitely
kind
still
of
trying to rationalize through it.
Right. Yeah. And we've said all along, he's kind of the glue, and he is sort of the ironically level-headed, and a trash mouth can't keep my...
Very, very realist.
So for him, it really could have been, well, I thought he said it, but because it was from Richie's point of view...
Maybe he doesn't quite believe it.
Right. Like, well, but it's a monster. I can't really say anything. And so maybe he heard that, thought, oh, he's not going to say anything. So then the monster didn't say anything. I bet if we had heard that moment from Bill's point of view, it would have sounded a lot different. It would have
been in quotes. It would have been the monster.
It wasn't italicized.
Right. Yeah, no, that was definitely an interesting perspective change. Again, I was very aware of it going into it on this with two of them there. I was like, right when Richie gets hit in the head and he kind of blacks out for a minute on the back of the bike is when it switches to Bill. Which I also thought was interesting. It was like, well, now that Richie can't be our point of focus, we have to switch to the only other person, which is conveniently Bill.
Yeah.
Because he's a good perspective to have. Like, in his head, things usually make more sense. It seems like.
Can we talk about riding Silver? I really thought it was dumb that they were going to ride the bike together.
And not just take the two bikes.
Right. Like, for me, wouldn't it be faster if we each rode our own bike and then one person isn't trying to power two people? But I realized I was wrong. And they were absolutely right. One, because Richie would have died. Absolutely. But two, because Silver really is like
if you get
part
it going.
of their protection, if you can get it going. But that way, Bill was basically able to save Richie, just like Richie had saved Bill under the house. Bill saved Richie because Richie could not have gotten on a bike, and I don't think they would have made it. I know in our last chapter, Ben, you had talked about how the leper might be like your favorite, scariest moment of the book, and I can see that. But for me, this was so much cooler because it did two monsters at the same time.
Yeah.
And it did chasing them down the street, not just at the house. And it's in, I'm going to use this term loosely, real time, like the real time of 1958. It's not within a flashback of 1958.
It's the present time of the actual chapter.
This isn't a memory. This isn't remember when this happened. This isn't
Eddie
is happening.
saying, hey, I remember this similar thing, and I'm going to either tell you or not tell you about it, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that we've seen the monster go after more than one person at a time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? You look like you're thinking.
I am thinking.
Well,
but
whenever he went after Adrian Mellon, he only went after Adrian.
Yeah, only went after Adrian.
There were other people that he could have gone after there.
Only went after
that
Georgie,
was the only
only
other
went after
public.
Eddie
That was the
Corcoran.
only other
Mhm.
witnesses to one happening. The rest have all been one-on-one. So after they do finally get away, and
Mhm.
Richie, is bleeding pretty badly from the head. He got smoked, similar to how he got hit in the ear earlier in the fist fight, only way worse. He's bleeding from the scalp, and Bill thinks he's dying. They get off the bike, they pretty much fall over, and they're like a tangle of arms and legs, because falling off a bike with two people on it, it's pretty awkward. Falling off a bike, standing there, it's all awkward as it is. Bill hits him in the face, basically just because he thought he was passing out. And Richie goes into his Pancho Vanilla voice, which was pretty funny. And then they both start crying, and they hug it out, and they don't worry about someone looking around thinking that there are a couple of fagolas this time. They're way past that. This is desperate. That was some serious shit. Like, seriously, because that's both the first time that either of them have actually had a true encounter, not the photographs, nothing. So I'm very curious to see them go and tell this story to the rest of the group, who had already started sharing their stories with them. So it was really nice to see those two just get over whatever pretense of tough guy or whatever, and we just need each other right now. Like, we just need a hug.
Yes,
that was serious.
So this goes back to what I was saying when Stephen King decided to have a picture slice somebody's fingers open. It's just one of those moments that you're like, wow, he really is settling in to kill off everybody at this point. Who knows?
All right, so we got a couple questions for our new readers. I think I have one and Melissa has one. So Luke, so far, which is, in your opinion, the scariest iteration of Pennywise?
I saw this question before we started recording, and I legitimately haven't been scared. There's definitely like creepy, weird, like what's going on. And so thinking about it that way, like what's the creepiest or most, I'll say, unsettling thing for interactions with Pennywise is probably the photograph with the two boys and Bill getting his fingers cut. Because like I said earlier, that really is like the defining time. Yeah. That you can't fake that. Like there's something magical or supernatural going on. Everything else, maybe you can try to justify it, that's what I was trying to logically come up with something the same way Richie was. He's going through hearing these other kids' stories, and it was like, well, maybe this, or maybe it's a perception thing. There's no perception to this. It's just something else. And so I think that's the thing that really sticks with me, is being different enough than the rest of them to clearly be the most unsettling thing, is what I think, at least.
So my question for you is, what happened to Georgie's school photo? That's
a good question too. So I think, I don't know where it went necessarily, but I think I know why it wasn't there. And that's because that's kind of a bullet that Pennywise has already used. So he's not going to use that again. And it's kind of a tell that, hey, yeah, keep looking, boys. Like, because clearly Pennywise knew that Bill had seen the photo because he drenched the thing with blood and all that. So he's kind of like, hey, if I take this away, they're going to spend more time in this book, and I can use this against them in a different way, which then turns into the other photo. So I think it's just vanished. I mean, I don't know where it's gone. I don't think like an actual person came in and took it out of the book. I think it's somehow magicked away, just to get Bill's attention to look deeper.
So Luke, do you have any questions or?
Not really. We definitely had an interesting battle with Pennywise, and so my what is it spreadsheet got another tick in it, which we seem to be getting one about every chapter now, which is, I kind of wish there was one without one, just kind of a more on and off, but there's such long chapters that you could break these up in just the smaller parts. So my what is it spreadsheet got a dual line input, because I really did think that Bill and Richie's experiences, though they were simultaneous, they were different. They saw different monsters So quickly going through my list here. Bill Denbrough, Eddie Tozier, both approximately 12 years old. There were witnesses, each other. The shape of the fear that Pennywise took was the clown for Bill, the werewolf for Richie. I didn't think there was really a lure this time other than Bill taking the initiative to go after him. I didn't think there was anything that Pennywise drew them in necessarily. I think they just kind of did it of their own volition and went after him, which I guess maybe the photo you could say was kind of a lure to pique Bill's interest, but I don't know. I feel like it's a little different than the lures that we've seen before where Pennywise turns on this supernatural charm or enticing thing and changes the attitudes of the characters in the moment. So I didn't really see that necessarily. The site of the attack was 29 Neibolt Street. The date was a week after, so probably early June.
This was late June.
Late June.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was a few weeks.
The near water, not necessarily, although they basically, again, this is just if they mention there's water around. I know on the map it clearly shows the canal's pretty close, but again, they didn't mention it here at the house, similar to Eddie's with the leper. It is near the train yard, though, which is industrial, and then they do mention the storm drain on the street later on. Silver suit and silver eyes were mentioned. Black and orange for orange buttons as well. The orange ruff and the pom-pom buttons, and the bright flick of orange close to a storm drain. The smell associated this time was the smell of decaying leaves right before they went in, which we've seen before. It's usually something to do with death, it seems like. The witnesses were each other. No dismemberment, no bodily consumption. The victim injured ahead of attack. I would say that the connection of Richie's ear being hit, or like the side of his head being hit, similar to the fist fight, was kind of a connection here. It wasn't like blood was drawn and that brought it out. Like I think we kind of have seen a couple times here and there where like Adrian was being attacked already, and that aggression, him being injured, was what brought him out at that point. Or Eddie Corcoran, I think he cut his arm, and that was before we had any indication that Pennywise was around. So it was almost like a shark in the water thing on some of them. I didn't get that here, but there was the injury connection that I drew from there. It knowing the victim's name, it wasn't mentioned, but the way... What?
Richie's name was on the jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Richie's name was on the jacket, but
I think that counts.
I think that counts for Richie. And for Bill, whenever Bill calls out that you killed my fucking brother, I'm taking if we had Bill's perspective, it would have said, the monster said, and I'm going to kill you too, because I think he knows who Bill is, and that's kind of you understood as Bill, is what I'm taking. So I think he knew who they were. He just didn't say their names specifically, other than the name on the jacket, which they both saw. Both saw Richie's name on the jacket, which was interesting. I didn't really think they were being pulled from a happy thought, which has happened several times. And there was a calling out to God, which is the first time we've seen that in a while, which was the thank God, thank God, thank God from Richie, I believe. Yeah. So those are all my categories, and it fits along with most of them again. But yeah, I don't really have any. There's definitely some things I'm looking forward to. Like I said, these two boys going back to the Barrens and talking to everybody else and sharing their stories. Maybe we'll get Stan's story. I doubt it because he doesn't talk. But
I have no idea.
The change in Richie's perspective is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
And I really liked in this chapter getting Richie's perspective in general.
So we're going to move on to our favorite things of this chapter, and I will start with Melissa. What was your favorite thing?
My favorite thing...
Bill looked at them and grinned, and a peculiar certainty stole over Richie as Bill looked from him to Ben to Beverly, and then back to Bradley, whatever his name was. Beverly was a part of them. Bill's eyes said so. Bradley, what's his name, was not. He might stay for a while today. Might even come down to the Barrens again. No one would tell him no. So sorry, the Losers Club membership is full. We already have our speech impediment member. But he was not part of it. He was not part of them.
That idea of drawing in a particular group of children. Mm-hmm. And this kind of fits with my theory that it's supposed to be those particular kids rather than it just hey, these kids are getting along and so they have different kinds of attributes. No, like
They're being
it has to be those specific children, because if another child comes in, they don't fit.
So, all right. My favorite thing this chapter was Mr. Nell. I loved him. I know he's a washover character for you, Melissa, but he is what good police work back then and even today should be. You find out about a problem, you figure out what causes the problem, and you resolve the problem, but you don't have to punish all the time. If somebody caused something, if it can be used as a learning experience, because Lord fucking knows Ben learned from this. He was bawling like a baby, tears rolling. That you know he'll never build a dam again without looking up what it's gonna cause, and he taught with that. And to me that was the sign of what, because it's very few and far between a good adult in the town. There's not a lot of good adults in Derry, or that we've seen.
They were all killed off when they were kids.
Yeah, the good ones, get killed off. So it's
Or
nice
they've all lost children.
Yeah,
that's true too.
So it's good to see somebody actually caring for the kids, and like I said before, treating them like adults, not sugarcoating anything, but letting them learn, but also letting them know that their actions have consequences. All right, so Luke, what was your favorite thing?
I've kind of talked about this already. I really liked Richie in general and how he interacts with other people, but the relationship he has with Bill, I think, was something even better, because Bill needs that. And just the way that they interact, and the closing scene of this chapter is something we haven't seen before. It's these two boys who earlier they kind of hugged each other and it was awkward and whatever. This time, they've gotten way past the pretense of anything. They're very good for each other, and they balance each other very well throughout the two different major scenes that we see them in, of Richie challenging Bill to go back into his brother's room and start facing that demon within himself, and then Bill coming back later on and challenging Richie to go along with him to, let's take this into our own hands and let's take it to the monster. Let's take the fight to the monster and figure out what's going on.
Thank you for joining us this episode. You can reach out to us on social media at floatsdownhere on Twitter, floatsdownhere@gmail.com. Send us your comments, your concerns, and what you like, what you don't like about the show. Check us out on thepodcastthat.com. You can find all of our other shows, the podcast that must not be named, the podcast that drinks and knows things, as well as this one, and any new ones we come out with, we'll put it on there as well. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes, and join us next time for Chapter 9.
Cleaning up. Stay imaginary.
You'll float too.
Thanks.